Comrades, great to be with the mighty AWU. Dare to struggle? You don't fight? All right, we've got to do a bit better than that, comrades. Dare to struggle? You don't fight? There we go. That's the AWU I heard about. The original union, the fierce union. Thanks for having us here today. Thanks to Ben Davis, Daniel Walton, Jimmy, the whole team. I know we stand on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. We pay our respects to elders both past, present, always was and always will be Aboriginal land comrades. Now, we want to get a couple of things done today. So we're going to talk about three key issues. One is we've got an HSR conference coming up. How many HSRs do we have in the room? Raise your hands. That's a shitload. Beautiful. And then we're going to talk about silica dust, which is what we're terming is the next black lung, or what asbestos really was. We need to spend some time talking about it. It's a really serious issue. And then we're going to talk about industrial manslaughter laws, because it's about time we had them in Victoria. So that's three key topics. And before I get there, though, just want to acknowledge the UGL delegates here in the room. 455 days on the grass. Longest dispute in Australia. The delegates have been like steel, like unshakable, unbeatable. This is a terrible company that you all know about, sixth largest company in the world, mines our resources and yet pays no tax in this country. Pays no tax. And at the same time can sack over 200 of our best workers, use the Fair Work Act to corporately avoid their obligations, and send some of our best workers out of a job. This isn't the only company that's tried it on, but it's certainly the biggest and the nastiest. And you should know that the entire union movement stands in solidarity with those workers. They shouldn't be there one day longer, but they'll be there one day stronger than this company. Pull that up. With me today is Dr. Paul Sutton. He's the head of our OH&S unit. So he's sort of the expert in this space on silica. So I'm going to get him to take us through some of the OH&S stuff as well, because I wanted the best to come with us today. Want to talk about the HSR conference. If you haven't registered for it, you should. This is the biggest conference of any delegate structure in Australia. We have over 1,000 people show up every year. We've also started taking out to regional areas. Who here is from a regional area? Yep, great. I can see some Dwelt people here too. They're definitely from regional areas. We've been doing it last year in Bendigo and Morwell. This year we're going to extend it out to Wodonga too. This is a paid conference, right? Your boss has to pay you a wage to go there. So use your powers under Section 69 and show up. It is a big deal, and we're going to spend a bit of time at that conference talking about silica as well. Do you want to talk about the highlights?
Thanks, mate. So this conference is going to focus on Section 58 of the OH&S Act. So as HSRs, Section 58 is really, really important. You know, we've got some powers in the OH&S Act to be able to resolve issues. You've got our powers like the cease work and issuing a PIN. Section 58 is actually key to organising your site as an HSR. Under Section 58, you have the right to inspect the workplace, to talk to your DWG members about the health and safety risks that they face. You have the right to sit in interviews where your members are being interviewed about health and safety matters, and you have the right to invite the union onto the site when you need assistance. It's a critical part of the Act to ensuring that our workplaces are as safe and as healthy as they can be, and so that's why we're focusing the entire conference on Section 58 this year. One of our key highlights is going to be that a proud AWU member, Michael Muscat, is going to be part of the welcome ceremony. You might know last year Michael won the 2017 HSR of the Year award, those WorkSafe awards that are handed out. So Michael's been 27 years with VisiBoard Coolaroo and has been an HSR for approximately 20 years now. Amongst his greatest achievements on site have been implementing and maintaining risk controls around traffic management, reducing manual handling in the workplace, and, like, when I heard about this win, I could not believe it, this bloke helped win a third shift to alleviate fatigue issues on site. Like, that is massive. So we're thrilled that Michael's going to be with us to help us open our conference. It's October the 30th. Make sure you register, and if you You can register now online and put it in your diary, Tuesday the 30th of October.
All right. Have all OH&S delegates picked up your badge? All right. This is not for pulling over cars on the freeway. All right. We do badges as a bit of a first, as a bit of a trial, because sometimes bosses don't take you seriously, but they tend to take you seriously if you've got a bit of authority behind you. They cost $20 a pop to make, so don't sell them on eBay. Just take the one, or take them for your other colleagues who are delegates, but a little bit of merch for you guys as well. I want to go to silica dust for a little bit of this session, and I know there'll be some questions out of it. Did anyone hear on the radio this morning on the ABC in the car going in to the conference about Queensland's WorkSafe? They recently did an audit of 10 sites that cut stone, and when they did the screening of the workers, they discovered 22 of them had silicosis. So they're now going to screen every single work site. The issue we have with silicosis is that we have not, as a movement, and certainly as WorkSafe, and definitely as bosses, have kept up with the advancement of science, of advancement of current knowledge. We have had some changes with the type of stone that are being brought into this country, specifically Caesar stone. So everyone apparently wants that in their new kitchens. You see it all the time, Caesar stone. But that has such a high level of silicosis that silicon in it that Paul's going to talk about. Silicosis has existed as a disease for a very long time. Silicon is everything. It would have existed when they were building the pyramids. But things have changed with technology. And what we want to talk to you about is how we keep up with it and what new OH&S standards we need to put in place to keep our fellow workmates safe.
So just briefly, crystalline silica dust, if it gets into your lungs, it can result in two things. First of all, lung cancer. Okay, so the Cancer Council has acknowledged that crystalline silica is a known carcinogen. So if you work in an environment where you are potentially exposed to crystalline silica dust, you need to be aware that one of the risks you face is the potential for lung cancer. Secondly is silicosis. The issue is it is very much like asbestos, right? Silica dust is so tiny that it can get into the deepest parts of your lungs. But unfortunately, your lungs cannot get it out again. So once it gets lodged in your lung, either a cancerous growth can form in response to that, or as you get more and more lodged in your lung, what happens is effectively you have a little rock, a tiny microscopic pebble in your lung, and that rock is going to scar your lung. The result of that scarring is that that scar tissue cannot absorb oxygen. So very slowly, your lungs lose the ability to breathe for you because they become scar tissue. That's what silicosis is. So that's when your lungs slowly lose the ability to breathe. The only treatment for silicosis is a lung transplant, and even that is remedial. It may buy you 10 years more of life. Yeah? So what we know about these conditions caused by crystalline silica is that they are potentially fatal.
So we're going to talk about Anthony White for a moment, and I'm going to read out some quotes. How old do you think Anthony is in this photo? Really? Looks like an old man. He's 36. He's 36-year-old. This is what silicosis has done to him, and you can see him in sort of a skeleton sort of state at this point. Like he's lost sort of all the fat and all the muscle off his body. He worked for a decade with artificial stone products and, silicons and everything, right? Glass, bricks, but particularly with the importation of Caesar stone. Silicosis, we should remember as a collective, is entirely preventable, right? This is something we know we can fix and we know we can prevent, but it didn't happen with Anthony. Here's some of the quotes that he told us. I want to make sure no one else has to go through this. It is absolutely horrendous for me and my family, who have had to watch me get sicker and sicker. Wearing protective gear wasn't policed at any of my workplaces. There was so much dust flying around, you could feel the grit on your teeth and you could taste the dust in your mouth. But I didn't think it was a problem. I had no idea this could make you sick. I'd personally like to see rules enforced so no one cuts it dry in any workplace in Australia. It's dangerous and it's putting lives at risk. Now, this is not the only person. There's lots of people who are in this position, but it's even in places where it's affecting teachers. So we've recently had an AWU member come forward and said they've got silicosis. That person is an art teacher and they're doing pottery work. And I think because of the pottery work they were doing, teaching kids how to, hey, kids make those little terrible thumb mugs. You don't really know what to do with them, but you've got to put them on your fucking shelf because you love your child, but you hate the mug. Making those mugs has given her silicosis. So there's a huge problem.
So what's going on? We essentially have a confluence of two sort of issues. The first is that there are new issues emerging. So Caesar stone, that Luke's already mentioned, that wasn't around 20 years ago. There was no Caesar stone 20 years ago. That's an artificial man-made stone. It's produced by a factory in Israel, and it is up to 70% crystalline silica. Like if you cut that, you are pretty much cutting straight crystalline silica. At marble, 30% crystalline silica. So naturally occurring rocks tend to have much lower levels of crystalline silica, barring sandstone. So we have these new technologies coming out. Also, science is telling us that some of the controls that we had might not be as effective as we first thought. So dampening, that's where you're cutting rock and you're spraying water directly onto the cut, onto the blade, so that the dust is turned to a sludge and it doesn't get into the respirable zone, the breathing zone. Science is starting to indicate that dampening is not as effective as we thought it was. But we've also got some old problems. And the first one of our old problems is that the Australian standard has not changed for a long, long, long time. And secondly, we don't have a centralised system. So this has come to attention because of doctors who have started to notice silicosis cases walking back into their surgeries have been speaking out. Right, we don't have a centralised system for when people get diagnosed with silicosis, so regulators can go into workplaces and shut those workplaces down or start enforcing some real controls. So we've got some old problems and some new problems that we're grappling with here.
So, it's all right. So what we want to do is we're going to change the Australian standard. We're going to set our own standard, and it's the job of delegates here to enforce this standard. We want this standard to go nationwide. So the science, the international science, the USA standard, they're well ahead of us. They're at 0.25, and we are still sitting at 0.1. What we want to say is that before you hit that standard of 0.25, which is the new standard that we want to introduce, and we'll show you what that looks like in a tick, that you need to take mitigating moves to make sure that you don't hit that standard at 0.125. So that is a new change. We're going to unions to get that endorsed as a VTHC standard, and then we're pushing WorkSafe to make that happen. But there's also some other things that we need to do as well. We also need to know how frequently this is occurring. So we need doctors to mandatory report every time they see this come up. So we had a discussion with the Health Minister this week. She thinks it's a good idea. There's some processes to go through, but we need to make sure that we know of every single circumstances that happens, because we need to track. And without that data, without that key bit of data, we won't be able to do more ways in which we can look to enforce this and to make sure that we stay ahead of the science. We'll take you to the safety standard now. This is what the silica standard is. Is this in everyone's packs?
It's at the desk.
At the front desk, I've got a team here, Sam and Luke. Stand up, guys, stand up. Say hello. Get a copy of the new standard. So if you're a delegate or you're working with Caesar stone or you're working with any type of stone, grab a copy of this. This is your new standard to enforce on your sites.
So the important thing about the standard is it's got the standard on the front and it's got the science on the back, right? So if you're having an argument with your boss about silica levels in your workplace and they start moaning about the Australian standard, you take them to the science on the back. The whole point of our OHS legislation is it is risk-based. Once someone has knowledge, they need to do something to take reasonable steps to control it. You put that science under the boss's nose, they have the knowledge, they have to take steps to control it from that point onwards. Secondly, we've got a poster for your guys so you can put them up in the workplace. They're nice and big. A2, again, they're on the desk with Luke and Sam. You'll be able to pick them up today. So if Luke, if you just flick on to the next one, the guys will see the poster. So you can grab that poster. It too has the silica standard on it. Right? One of the big issues that we learned from Anthony, the guy whose story you just heard, he had no idea. He had no idea that the stuff he was breathing in was going to be that harmful to him. So part of our job is to make sure we educate our members about this issue, particularly if you're working in one of those industries like quarrying or construction where we know that exposure to silica dust occurs.
How much longer have we got, really?
Oh, just about 1 minute. No, mate, you can go for another 5. That's
All right, another 5. We'll be quick then. I will get us now to industrial manslaughter. Industrial manslaughter exists in...
Luke, before you do. So, silicosis. The AWU supports this campaign, and in particular our members who work in quarries, particularly north of the Great Divide, but all quarries. Our concrete batches potentially will have exposure, and anyone who works with sand will potentially have exposure at all as well. And I remember as an organiser when I was in Bendigo representing 3 members who had advanced silicosis, who within a matter of months went from being reasonably fit to being on an oxygen bottle that they had to wheel around with them, and they all worked in quarries in northern Victoria. So this is well and truly overdue, and we support the campaign wholeheartedly. Anyone in construction could potentially be exposed as well. The thing that worries me more than anything about silicosis is that up until 12 months ago, we thought it was largely a quarry worker's stonemason's disease. It was for them what black lung minus phthisis is for miners, but it's not. It's actually more like asbestos. So we originally thought asbestosis, mesothelioma was for people who mined it or manufactured it, and now there's asbestos cases across, society, and silicosis is on a very similar trajectory. So we support this, and we will support this because it's just an idea whose time has come. Sorry to take some of your time, Luke.
Got 4 minutes left.
I'll give you another 2 minutes, mate, for that.
Appreciate it, comrade. Industrial manslaughter. 18 people have been killed in Victoria this year to date. One of them was your member, a Dwell member, a guy called Neil. And you'll have some colleagues here, and we want to pay respects to all you guys. And it's very difficult. 18 people have been killed this year, and this time last year, 18 people had been killed. And the year before that, 18 people have been killed, and it's about the same the year before that. End of this year, I know there'll be somewhere around 21, 22 people who will be killed in this state, and it hasn't moved. It just hasn't moved, and it hasn't moved because we haven't changed the laws to make bosses take it seriously that there is a real penalty when you kill a worker. Right now, bosses think they can kill a worker because they can pay a fine. Do you know in some construction jobs, you can get insurance as a company against the mitigation that a worker could be killed, and the insurance company will pay the fucking fine. You can get insurance on this shit. So at the point in which companies can get insurance about killing workers, something needs to change. And so that's what we want to get done and talk about a little bit today. I know we're only a couple of minutes. Maybe give this one example. You want to do Redback?
Yeah. So Redback, this is a tree cutting company. They went to a house, they quoted a job. When they quoted that job, they looked at the tree and they looked at the power lines right next to that tree and they wrote it down in the quote. They then wrote a safe work method statement where they said close to power lines, but they didn't put any risk controls in place, right? And then this company sent a 22-year-old man up that tree to cut that tree down. The court found, this is what the court said, the court said that company relied on nothing more than the skill and luck of that man avoiding hitting those power lines.
22 years old.
22. They could have shut him down, they could have suppressed him, they did nothing. That company walked away with a 150 grand fine over the death of a 22-year-old. We don't get any justice in this system at the moment. There's no justice. There's cases where the fines handed down are less than the cost of fixing the OH&S issue that caused the death. Right? Where's the incentive? It's just the cost of doing it. They roll the dice, these employers. Secondly, we know that killing a worker must be a crime in this state. If you negligently kill someone, if your negligence kills someone, then you should pay the price for that. At the moment, if you kill a cat, you'll cop 2 years in jail. And if you kill a worker, you'll cop 150 grand fine.
So I'm going to skip a few slides because we're running out of time. So where do we get up to? Well, a whole lot of unions of workers just like you were outraged by the fact that employers can get insurance about this stuff, they pay fines, and no one goes to prison. So we've done a lot of work. We created a policy about having industrial manslaughter laws in this state. We then sought out the Labor Party. We got a commitment. Now, the commitment that we got, and the AWU were doing a lot of work in this space, was that if you kill a worker, you can face 20 years in prison. And that's what we fucking want. It happens in the UK. They send people to prison, but it doesn't happen here. So at that moment, that if you're in control of that job, and that was your business, and you knew you could fix it, and you didn't do it, and you sent that 22-year-old up a tree to get killed, you're going to prison. So the next step for us is to make sure that once the ALP now have made that commitment, that they'll do 20 years prison for killing a worker, that we'll get industrial manslaughter laws. The next trick is for us to make sure that they get elected so we can get this job done. Now, I'm not about, politics and getting, anyone elected for anyone's sake. They actually have to deliver things for working people. This is what we desperately want. I desperately want this law. It has to happen if we're going to reduce this death rate from 22 people a year down to 0, where it has to be. On top of that, there's not just 22 people that get killed. Every year there's 20,000 injuries where workers get maimed. That will reduce that too. That's our core work. So we're doing a lot of work right now, doing door knocks, doing street stores, getting people to make pledges to keep the bastards honest, that if you get re-elected, we want you to see that you introduce this within, the first year. Now, I've met with the bosses, I've met with AIG, and I've met with Vicky, so they're peak organisations. They fucking hate it. They absolutely hate the idea that some of, their fellow company, their bosses and their directors could go to prison, but tough shit. Right, this is a Labor government. We want them to do Labor things. So we've got to get this done. So in your packs right now, does everyone have their packs with them? What we're doing is we're getting rooms full of people to hold up that pledge, to sign that pledge, so that when Labor gets re-elected, I can show them a room full of AWU members who say, I want industrial manslaughter laws. We did this last week with the CFMU, so they've all taken the pledge. We've done it with the ETU. Now we're with you guys, with the AWU. So pull them out of your packs. I'm going to do the photo with you now, and then we'll get you to sign the pledges after because we're running out of time. Have we got the photographers here? Beautiful. All right. Now everyone hold it up high, just like, that's beautiful. Perfect. One look here first. Now look to Sam, take a photo. Well done, comrades.
Thank you.
All right, and the only thing I want to end on is if you want to get involved in this campaign, we're doing a lot of work right now, taking this message to the streets. We're doing door knocks, we're doing street stalls, we're doing phone banks. Ben will let you know more details about that, but these are things we want to make change. We are very pleased to present to you guys the AWU. It's nice to have Trades Hall back in your room.
Yeah.
Good to see you all.
Can we just, if I get a bit of it, I'll give you a bit more time, mate. Just for a couple of questions. Any questions to Luke or Paul? Yep, just down there. Who's got the mic? Fez?
My name's John, work for Gork on a beach. Did I hear you say silica in sand?
Yes, that's correct.
Am I jumping to conclusions? I spend all day working on the beach.
Yeah,
and
so
breathing sand every day.
So the issue is when it becomes respirable, so when it becomes small enough, when it becomes a dust. So when it's a dust that you can breathe into your lungs, that's where the problem arises. So if you are working around sand, it would be wise to be aware of it. Actual sand grains themselves are not too bad. It's the dust that you need to be aware of.
Is it dusty?
It's all through summer. The wind's blowing all the time. We're breathing it in constantly.
Get a test.
Yeah, get tested. Yeah. Also, I would suggest so there's PPE masks you can use that will cut down on how much dust gets in. So that will be another thing to talk to your employer about.
We use those when we're using rapid set and concrete products, but
Yeah, so quickly, the two things I do, go to your doctor, get tested, right? We gave a presentation similarly to this to the CFMU. One of the young guys got tested 2 weeks beforehand and he had silicosis. That was pretty devastating. Not saying that's going to be your circumstances at all. Go see a doctor. The second thing is you've got OH&S organisers. Go get them to come out with you to the site. Yep.
Yep, we'll definitely be talking to all the bosses about this when we get back.
Yeah, absolutely, you should. Yeah, great question.
Right. Any other questions?
And you're
Just
not
one
the
more.
only one who will be in this crowd who is thinking the same thing at this point. I promise you.
Just one behind first.
Yeah, Hayden Batstone, Forest Fire Management. We do grading in the Little Desert. Would that, would that cause this problem?
Sorry, grading in the Little Desert?
Yeah.
It's going to depend on the chemical content of what it is you're doing the grading on. But again, if it's sand, if you suspect, right, this is the thing. Yeah, you don't need to know with 100% certainty. If you suspect that you are conducting an activity that turns sand or silica containing products into a dust, then that is enough to take action. Yeah, we had an associate professor from Monash who told us, don't worry about wearing a personal monitor to see if you're getting exposed to this stuff. Shine a torch on the work. And if you see dust in the air, that's enough. That's enough. Yeah? That's enough to start a conversation with your employer about the silica standard and what needs to be done in your workplace.
Did everyone pick that up? Really simple technique. We can all do that.
Just this gentleman here first, please. Steve.
Yeah, Steve Jones, just one thing. I wonder if we could pass on the information to the relevant unions about sort of condition monitoring, whether some sites may have an industrial hygienist. Can we get sort of valid data that we can use to back up the claims, like so we can use the torch if we see the dust? How can we then get the extra information about the standard and where the companies are failing so we can push back a bit on that?
Good question, Steve. So when you look at our poster, you'll notice on the poster that there's a website where we have heaps of information on silica, and there's a QR code, so you can just take a picture of it with your phone, it will take you straight there. That'd be the first place that I would go. It's a really great point about a hygienist. We'll try and find one that's union friendly, who's able to do the relevant testing and have them on the books for unions. Yep.
Okay, I'm only going to take one more, guys. Sorry, I know it's a really good topic, but we're running out of time. Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Yates from Bombardier Transportation. Where do they lie regarding sandblasting units?
Yep.
Which is a fine grit and a fine sand.
Sandblasting is really dangerous. There was an outbreak of silicosis in a factory in, I think it was Bangladesh. They were sandblasting jeans to give them that. You know how 10 years ago it was real fancy to have the faded jean look?
This, right?
It's still fancy, mate.
Still fancy, right, okay. So, what that teaches us is that sandblasting is very dangerous. So if you are conducting sandblasting work, then I would be doing all the stuff we've just talked about, speaking to your employer about proper controls, and also ensuring that you guys are not exposed to anything over 0.025 milligram.
Yep, okay, thanks.
All right, that's enough. Look, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Luke and Paul. Appreciate your appreciation.